Roger Stone was treated very unfairly, in my opinion, and so were many others on this side. We'll see what happens, but no, we're getting rave reviews for what I did.
And what did he do? He commuted Roger Stone's sentence. He was scheduled to go to prison for years in a really bogus sham case. The sentence is commuted. The conviction stands for now. And Roger Stone joins us. Again, so glad that you're not in jail. Roger, how do you feel right now? Has the shock worn off, or did you expect it all along that the president would come through?
Well, Greg, I feel thankful. I feel thankful to God. I prayed to Jesus Christ since January when I was reborn, reaffirmed my belief in Christ, and therefore I approached this without fear. I knew that God would never abandon me, that God would protect me, and therefore I guess I had a certain equanimity about it as the date approached. I'm also thankful to the president, who I believe was guided by the hand of God, as he is guided every day, because he has the most difficult job in the world. And of course, my family is very thankful. On the other hand, the battle continues. I mean, the same people who promulgated the Russian collusion hoax are now back at it. And their new narrative is, well, Roger Stone knew of wrongdoing or misconduct by the president, and in return for his silence, the president commuted his sentence. And the lack of any evidence is the evidence itself in their argument. Greg, that just never happened. They gave me the most intensive investigation you could imagine. They had almost 2 years to do it. They found no evidence of that being true because it is not true. So what they did was, what they are doing, Mr. Mueller, Mr. Rosenstein, Mr. Weissman, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Nadler, Ms. Pelosi, is they are taking something I did say and bastardizing it. I did say, honestly, and I passed 2 polygraph tests about this, that that the prosecutors did offer me the opportunity to bear false witness against the president, to testify falsely against him, so it could be used as an article of impeachment against him, and they dangled some unspecified leniency towards me, and I declined. That is not the same as what the Washington Post is saying today,
all right.
However.
We just saw some pictures. You mentioned Robert Mueller, and let's take him as an example. And I think you pointed out his nickname behind his back. The staffers, they call him Mumbles. And if you remember that testimony, it kind of was a nickname that fits. But you mentioned you were born again. And I've heard you talk about this before, and I was moved by it. And Franklin Graham, in your conversation with him, you were calm. You knew God would protect you. But I would like to ask you this. Will you forgive those, or do you forgive those who did you wrong? Do you forgive Robert Mueller, the judge, the juror who had it out for you all along? Do you forgive them?
Well, Greg, that's the single hardest thing about being a Christian, but the answer is yes, because in Hebrews 30:31, vengeance is reserved for God. It's not for me, but those who have wronged me, those who have done wrong, they will face the vengeance of a living God. So I don't have to worry about it. It's not within my providence. It is God's specifically. And therefore, I'm confident that those who have done wrong will receive their eternal punishment in the end, but I'm not interested in revenge at this point. In fact, I'm praying for those who have wronged me. Now, I know that I've been a hard-boiled political operative for a long time, and I know there are people out there, bit of a showman, who are saying, "Oh, come on, Stone, this is a head fake. This is a ploy for sympathy. This is some kind of a posturing." No, Greg, I'm not worried about that. I really don't care what they say, because he knows what's in my heart. And it will be proven over time. I remember my friend Chuck Colson, who I knew not that well, but knew in the Nixon days because I was relatively junior. And there was a lot of scoffing about his prison fellowship, but he went on to be hugely influential in the lives of many people who had been ground up in the penal system in this country. Therefore, yes, I think in many ways, I'm not saying that I'm not still a hard-edged political warrior, but at the same time, I have forgiven those who have trespassed against me, and I pray for their souls even today.
Very beautiful, and I believe you. And that wasn't a trick question, by the way. I was just curious how you were going to, and it was just beautiful. And by the way, you mentioned Chuck Colson. I got a picture of him here. Let me see if I can call it up. This is the gentleman that Mr. Stone was talking about right there. A Marine, an Ivy Leaguer who ultimately went to prison in the Watergate scandal and became a prison minister. And I think he had a true conversion of the heart, just like you did, Roger Stone. Very, very powerful. All right, so look, you're still a convicted felon, so you got to get back to work on taking care of that. What's the next move? And do you wish a little bit that maybe the president, I know you said you didn't want the pardon, but heck, you really could have moved on from all this had you gotten one.
Well, as you know, Greg, a pardon does come with it an ignition of guilt. I still continue to maintain I'm innocent of any material crime, and I certainly had no intent to lie to Congress, because the matters I was accused of making misstatements about were wholly immaterial. They didn't hide any underlying crime. I very specifically denied the witness tampering claim. It's ironic because the fellow I was accused of witness tampering with, in fact, I believe we have evidence that he tampered and threatened other witnesses who went to the grand jury. But I really have to think about the appeal. I've filed notice of appeal on two grounds. We filed a general appeal on constitutional issues and other issues pertaining to the conduct of the trial. I've also filed a separate appeal based on the judge's decision not to grant me a new trial on the basis of the egregious and blatant misconduct of the jury forewoman. There's no doubt that in 2019, she was attacking me by name, not just the president, but me by name on Instagram and Facebook. She had those settings on a private setting on her social media platforms during jury selection and the trial, and then she deleted them immediately after the trial.
Roger, I got to jump in. We covered that, and I know that's going to be part of your case. Just got a couple of moments left. By the way, and I've got to ask you this question. It's from one of our favorites here. You have the Nixon tattoo on your back. They want to know, and we have a picture of that for everybody at home. You're a big Nixon fan, as I am. Will you now get a tattoo of Donald Trump on your back?
Well, what I've been thinking about doing is getting Trump, Reagan, I've already got Nixon, Goldwater, and Bill Buckley, and doing kind of like a Mount Rushmore thing. I've been thinking seriously about that. All
right, that would be pretty wild indeed. Hey, by the way,
painful.
If anybody, painful indeed. I hear that. I hear that. There's a great movie about you, a documentary, which I think that you like a little bit as well. It's called Get Me Roger Stone. Anybody can see it on Netflix, and I think it's a pretty interesting and fair report, although it's kind of out of date now. Are you okay with this movie? You did participate in it. What are your thoughts on it now, 3 years later?
Yeah, I think it's fairly balanced, but of course, as you point out, it's very dated. There are at least two other documentaries that I know of in the works, one of them authorized, the other one being paid for by the Danish taxpayers through their cultural attaché, kind of a strange way to do business. So we'll see. I'm going to write a book about this horrific experience because I want other Americans to understand that, Greg, in the blink of an eye, you can lose your voice, you can lose your home, your savings, your insurance, your ability to make a living, and your freedom to travel and so on. So people need to understand how tyrannical the justice system can be. And when you're up against the very, very deep pockets of the Justice Department, you're outgunned. I see why 99% of the people who choose to plead not guilty are convicted. It's a meat grinder. And I want to, because I was gagged for so long, I would really like to tell my side of the story, because so much of it was not reported by the mainstream media.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, Roger Stone, again, glad you're not in jail, and you are going to be fighting until this thing is all cleared up. Great to have you on again. All right, to be continued, sir.
Thank you, Greg. Many thanks.
All right. Roger Stone, everybody.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest-growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to NewsmaxTV.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.